After my personal struggle with food left me sick and suicidal, I was struck with the realization that food alone can't fix us. So I set out to discover what could, and what I found changed everything. After coaching thousands of clients and interviewing the world's leading experts, I realized it was time to start a bigger conversation. What are you really hungry for?
It's great.
Ooh, good one.
What am I really hungry for?
I love that question.
It's time to discover what you're really hungry for. Do you constantly compare yourself to others? Do you believe you're just not good enough? That you should be something more, someone more? I get it. There's a lot of pressure in our society to be, do, and have. When we have this much pressure, we start to try to be what we think others want us to be. We try to do what others say we should do. We try to have what others say we should have. And in this process, we lose all that we are. Ram Dass said, if you're busy thinking you are somebody, going somewhere, doing something that is going to amount to something, suffering. It's as simple as that. You see, as long as you cling to these ideas of how you should be, what you should do, where you should go, and what you should amount to, you will only suffer. It's time to let that go. There is so much more to you than what you see in the mirror. You are not your image, your clothes, or your weight. You're not the house you live in, the car you drive, or the partner that you chose. You're not the title of your profession or lack thereof. You are you, and you are perfect. Your soul, your personality, your mind, your feeling, your thoughts, your ideas, your spirit, that is you, and it's time to accept all of you. So stop focusing on everything that's wrong with you and start focusing on everything that's right. Let go of the attachment to who you think you should be and start celebrating who you are. I had a client once who was stunningly beautiful. Most women would have done anything for her body, her face, and her life. But she was always looking for flaws. She just couldn't accept herself as she was. And no matter how many compliments she received, she still felt like she just wasn't good enough. Now, I had another client who was about 30 pounds overweight with what most people would consider to be an average face. Yet whenever she would walk into a room, heads would turn. She was the center of attention. And it wasn't because she was the most beautiful woman in the room or because she was dressed in an outrageous way. It was because she oozed confidence. She was strutting her stuff and owning what the good Lord gave her. She accepted herself fully, and that made her attractive beyond belief. And not just physically. People wanted to talk to her, to be around her, to have what she was having. You see, acceptance is attractive. Jon Kabat-Zinn said, until you stop breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. I'll take this a step further and say that as long as you're breathing, everything is right with you. Because everything that you feel is wrong is simply an opportunity for growth, for expansion, for love, and for becoming even more of who you already are. It's an opportunity for acceptance. So stop being imprisoned by the belief that you have to be perfect, whatever that means, or that you have to hit a certain number on the scale to be attractive. Accept yourself just as you are because you are stunning already. My guest today, Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin, will help us see that it all starts with accepting ourselves and believing that we're enough just as we are. So, Dr. Nina, I think one of the things that makes your work so powerful is your own personal experience with food and the relationship with food. Tell me the Reader's Digest version of your journey, if you wouldn't mind.
I'd be happy to. When I was 5 years old, I suddenly and randomly decided that I was fat, specifically that I had fat thighs. And I was a perfectly normal weight child. And I wasn't looking at magazines, I wasn't watching TV, I never heard of dieting. I just decided that I needed to be smaller to be better. And this was the beginning of my war with myself. which just got worse as I got older. And by the time I was an adolescent, well, every page of every one of my journals at that time is filled with numbers. How many calories I ate, how many calories I didn't eat. You know, everything was about what I was going to weigh, not weigh. My entire world was about my weight. And so after college, I finally went to therapy. And I talked about my boyfriend issues, my life, my parents, my family, my friends, everything but one thing. I never told her what was going on with food. Never.
Wow.
Because I didn't want to give it up. I mean, it secretly made me feel strong. When I was starving myself, I felt superior. Of course, it would inevitably end in a binge or something. And finally, I began to be hungry, for food, for life. And I went 3 years, never missed a week, 3 years faithfully, once a week. And by the end of that 3 years, without ever once talking about food with my therapist, all my eating disorder symptoms were gone. Totally gone. And how is that possible? Whatever was going on with food was a symptom of a problem. It wasn't the problem itself. And so the problem was my mean relationship to myself. And so as I learned to identify what was going on, to soothe myself with words instead of with ice cream and cookies, everything changed. And so by changing your relationship to yourself, everything with food changes. It's not the other way around. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt like if I could change my body, I could change my life. And that is a terrible way to think, because it's a wonderful illusion, but it is an illusion.
We are inherently flawed, I think, is a common belief.
Yeah.
What's the first step in getting past that belief and letting that go, shifting that, if you will?
You have to figure out where those beliefs came from. And I got this message even at 5 that I was too much. And so that registered in my little 5-year-old brain as I was literally too much. And my solution was, well, if there's just less of me, maybe then I'll be good. So you really have to look at, where did these notions and ideas come from? And they come from someplace within your family environment, your culture, our society. The other reason that people feel like there's something wrong with them is they have bad experiences, say, growing up. And those bad experiences can be traumatic, or they can be, slightly traumatic. And so when children have bad experiences in childhood to one extent or another, they think they're bad. And that becomes, it's hopeful. Oh, if I can just become good, I'm going to get the good treatment.
Right.
But ultimately, it becomes, so the strategy of hope becomes a conviction of your inner badness.
Got it.
And part of what I do as a psychoanalyst is help people understand that there are elements that are out of awareness, but not out of operation. And so the key is to be able to start recognizing that there's something going on that's leading to this behavior, rather than focusing on the behavior itself. That's why affirmations do not work.
Can we talk about this? But if you don't feel good about yourself and you have a lower self-esteem and you're saying these things to yourself that aren't true, that they're more harmful.
You can say something all day until you're blue in the face and you're not going to believe it. The only way affirmations are helpful is that they can help you identify that little voice that says no. Because that's the voice that you've got to go through. Where does that voice come from? Where did that voice originate? How old is that voice? When did that voice come into your life? Because that's what you have to get to and challenge.
I believe it's about self-discovery. What we're taught so much is, don't listen to that voice. And you're saying it's just the opposite.
It doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work, because you can't talk yourself out of what you also believe.
Wow.
You have to.
You can't talk yourself out of what you already believe.
Yeah, it's like people say, well, drop feelings. How do you drop a feeling? There's only one way, as counterintuitive as it sounds, there's only one way to get rid of feelings, and that is to actually feel a feeling. If you ever see a kid, not the one at the park that day, who, cry, they'll cry and then they'll stop and they'll be fine. Or they'll get angry and they'll have like a little temper tantrum and then they'll be fine, because they got it out of their system. Even if you're sad, hypomanic. So we live in a culture that says, don't be real with yourself. And as a result, people can't be with themselves. Yeah. And that leads to all kinds of addictions and problems. You can't talk yourself out of that.
See, I think you hit on just such a huge truth bomb. You know, it's that people they can't be themselves. And so they go through the motions of trying to become who others think they should be. Right. And then they're hungry for themselves. They're hungry for that reconnection. And then they eat, you know? And I hear you about the emotions. I think what happens, Dr. Nina, is that we don't want to be the crazy girl.
Well, there's a difference between having your emotions and the way you express your emotions.
Let's talk about that.
Right, because you can be very angry at someone and deal with it internally without going up to them and smacking them in the face, however much you're yelling at them or screaming at them or however much you might want to express your anger.
Got it.
And so, yeah, one is, okay, I'm feeling something. This is because this is happening to me. And now what do I need to do about it? How do I need to respond to myself? What do I need right now? And the behavior is the choice that you make on how to act on that feeling.
Got it.
Two different things.
Yeah. So how do we go about changing our views of ourselves? We don't think we're good enough. We're always comparing ourselves. But we live in a world, Dr. Nina, where skinnier, stronger, faster is supreme. So with all of this chatter, how do we tell ourselves and begin to believe and accept that we're good enough just as we are?
What I tell them is, you are so much more than what meets the eye, and that people absolutely have to get in touch with a more holistic view of themselves. I don't know anyone who said that they will love their friends more if their friends were thinner, or they just love their friends because their friends are so thin. So this is an idea that I don't know that is actualized in people's reality.
Right.
And I had, that we have physical selves, but we also have emotional, relational, creative, spiritual, all aspects of us that need our attention.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that we have to give up the notion, what we have to change is the notion that by changing our bodies, we change our lives.
Right.
And it's this fantasy that you can control the world by controlling the number on the scale. And it's a very compelling illusion, but it is an illusion.
It's this idea of perfection, which I don't even know what that word means.
I don't
it's
either.
like it's a word that we made up, and somehow we each assign a definition, and then we try to be that, but it's not real. For me, the crazy part is that we then try to achieve that idea of perfection that we just made up, no matter what the cost.
Right.
How do we let go, first of all, of this idea of being perfect, which isn't even real? And second of all, just really start to step into our own, get to know this inner self that you were talking about.
We have to recognize, well, what is it that you do not think is good enough? I ask people with my magic wand, if I waved it and tomorrow your life was perfect, what would change? What would be different? How do you know you're not living your most perfect life? How do you know, what is the difference between who you are, how you are now, and what you imagine is perfection, which to me sounds also very boring. I mean, have you ever met a perfect person? Like, yawn.
Yeah, it's the flaws that allow us to connect.
And also there's this matter of what are we looking at? And when we're looking at our flaws, we find the evidence we look for. Right? So we're in LA and we could drive to the airport and say, LA drivers are just nasty and horrible. And we would drive to the airport and we'd get cut off and flipped off, and there they'd be. Or we could say, they have a bad reputation, they're actually nice. And we could drive the same stretch of freeway, and there would be drivers that would be like, hey, come in, they'd be nice. Which is true. They're both true. Which are you going to focus on?
Do we make a list? Because, when all of those negative thoughts come flooding in, we don't think the good things. So how can we be aware of those beforehand?
Go in front of a mirror and find things you like about yourself. And I don't care what you weigh, you will find something you like. And the other thing that I ask people to do, and they never want to do it, and they're always so glad when they do it, is write to between 5 and 10 friends and say, hey, I'm doing this project, this is really hard for me, but will you give 3 words that describe me? And they always say, oh no, I can't do that, and my friends don't want to do that, and they won't be able to come up with anything. And they're always blown away by what their friends tell them.
What role do beliefs play in weight loss and transforming the way we live and feel and play and figuring out or deciding that we are good enough?
Thoughts and beliefs lead to feelings, lead to behavior. And it can be tricky because you can have thoughts and beliefs that, again, out of awareness but not out of operation. And I'll give you a quick example. I had a patient who came in and said, I am a food addict. I am addicted to Chunky Monkey. So she said, clearly nothing was going on with me. I was just chilling out watching TV. I'm an addict. I'm a food addict. So I asked her what she was watching on TV. She's like, Charmed, my favorite show in the world. I was happy to watch Charmed. What was the episode about? Oh, it's the episode where the devil comes and the sisters start fighting. And then she stopped and she said, oh, because it was at that moment that she realized that watching the show had activated her own sister stuff. Before she could even realize that she was upset about her sister, she went to Chunky Monkey, got mad at herself for eating it, instead of recognizing that she's actually mad at her sister.
Wow.
And that's how tricky it can be.
That is very, very tricky. How do you know? How is she supposed to, other than everyone lining up at your door, which we probably should all do, other than that, because you wouldn't get any rest, how can we start to become aware of those things on our own?
Well, I developed a strategy to figure out what's going on inside, and I talk about it in my program, Kick the Diet Habit, but I help people crack the code of emotional eating by recognizing what is going on with food that gives evidence about what they're feeling. People who gravitate more to bulky foods like pizza, pasta, breads, cakes, things like that. It's more about loneliness and emptiness and filling a void. Wow. And people who go to crunchy, anything with a bite, that's often associated with anger.
Yeah.
And that starts your investigation. And I tell people, be curious, not critical, because when you're curious, you can get answers.
What do we do when we feel like everything we've tried has failed? And maybe even we've tried Dr. Nina says it's that I need comfort and I'm really trying to find one and I can't.
You have to really get to the toxic relationship to yourself. And one way to do that is to recognize the way you talk to yourself. There's this great quote by Marsha Hutchinson. It says, if you talk to your friends the way you talk to your body, you'd have no friends left. And so one thing that I've really noticed a lot is people talk to themselves in second person. When you start talking to yourself as you, in second person, it is another way to catch that something else is going on. Either someone talked to you that way, which is often the case, and you're just replaying a relationship a relationship that was with another person now becomes internal. And this happens a lot with judgmental or critical parents. And if it was a relationship that you have, then you need to fully heal the past. Otherwise, it's going to haunt you. And you're going to be distracted with your battle with food.
Does it ever happen when we're older as well?
Yes. Yeah, when people have really awful disruptions in relationships, like maybe their first love or first relationship, something bad happens, or they're disappointed as adults, something happens. Everyone's an individual, and everyone comes to this for different reasons because of their own unique history. And you've got to figure out what it is for you.
So, Dr. Nina, the name of the show is What You're Really Hungry For. So tell me, what are you really hungry for?
That is such a good and provocative question. Well, some really good Swiss chocolate comes to mind, but so does time. I'm really hungry for time. Time with my family, time with my kids, time with my patients, time to do more, help more, have a really great vacation, time.
Dr. Nina, you are such a breath of fresh air, and I love having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for being here and for being with us. Your website is winthedietwar.com. These are the conversations that need to continue happening if we really want to learn to accept ourselves just as we are. So thank you for being you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
This week is all about accepting the magical, wonderful woman you are right now. So I invite you to choose one of Dr. Nina's tips that she discussed during our show and start implementing it in your life today. What can you do to start feeling good in your own skin and accepting yourself fully right this moment? Don't wait another day or even another hour. start to accept yourself right now. As always, the conversation continues at cynthiapasquella.com. Head on over and leave a comment below this video telling me the one thing that you will do to start accepting yourself today. And while you're there, make sure that you download today's free menu to track your progress. You'll find inspirational quotes from today's show and a daily checklist to keep you on track. It's located right below this video at cynthiapasquella.com. Did you like this video? If you did, please subscribe, and I'd be so grateful if you would share this video with your friends. And if you want to hear more from me, including stuff I only talk about in email, then come on over to cynthiapasquella.com and sign up for my email newsletter so you can be a part of this beautiful community of women who are discovering what they're really hungry for. This episode is brought to you by the Institute of Transformational Nutrition. Discover the secrets to becoming a go-to expert in nutrition coaching while making great money on the side or even enjoying a new career at www.transformationalnutrition.com. On next week's episode of What You're Really Hungry For. Is there something special built into gold medalists and all of these super achievers that you've worked with that maybe they have that the rest of us don't?
They're coached and they're also cultivated over time with the skill set that they've learned.